Hey guys, this is Charlie from AltCoin Buzz, and I'm back again from, let's call it, some time off. And today we are going to talk about Stellar, and we have a lot to go through, so let's jump straight into it. And Stellar was initially a fork of Ripple, and even though there's still some similarities between them, it has now developed itself to be a completely different project. But let's start from the beginning, and our story begins with Jed McCaleb, the technological mastermind who founded the P2P sharing platform eDonkey and the exchange Mt. Gox, and of course Ripple. And on the Ripple project, Jed had a disagreement with the CEO Chris Larsen, who is still there today, and left the project in July 2013. In the following year, 2014, Jed returned together with Joyce Kim, and they co-founded the Stellar Development Foundation. And their goal was to develop the Stellar open source protocol to allow for cross-border monetary transactions, including fiat and digital currencies. And they got a loan from the technology company Stripe and started working. And they also got the computer science professor David Mazières on board, and he authored their white paper where his creation, the Stellar Consensus Protocol, was explained. And trust me when I say that I have really tried to understand this protocol in its foundation, but I must say it was fucking hard. So if any one of you has a more comprehensive explanation than the one I'm going to give it a go in the comment section below to explain to the rest of us smugglers who are not deeply educated in the cryptography theory. But in simple terms, and I'm assuming now that you are somewhat familiar with the basics of a blockchain and that we need to have some way to create a consensus between the nodes of which transactions are valid and which ones are not. And what the Stellar Consensus Protocol does is to have a bunch of nodes that together decides if an account that wants to do a transaction have enough balance to complete the transaction. And many other blockchains that is not running proof of work, such as Neo for instance, uses a technique called the Byzantine fault tolerance, where the nodes are somewhat more towards a centralized manner and is often decided by the developer team. And in this way, consensus is achieved by 66% of the network achieving an agreement of the ledger. But as the Stellar network began to gain traction, the developers realized that the underlying technology wasn't secure even beyond the fault of a couple of nodes. So they started over and came up with another thing called the Federated Byzantine Agreement. And this is based upon the same idea, but instead of the nodes being predefined, anyone can join the network as a node, and each node can openly choose who they trust, and this results in a more secure network. And what's interesting is that these nodes aren't incentivized by any monetary reasons to keep the network going. That is, you don't get any mining rewards or fees as a node manager. Instead, they are relying on the actors that have monetary interest by using the Stellar network to run the nodes, and we will talk about these actors more in a minute. But first, I must say that I'm quite skeptical to these kinds of solutions where the network is somewhat relying on the goodwill of the community. It's the same thing with Nano or Roblox if you will. And it may be a bit cynical, but there will always be bad actors no matter where you go, so my general thinking is that you need some sort of real punishment for these individuals, and as of right now, I'm not seeing this inherently in the Stellar network. But if you disagree with me on this point, I would love to read your thoughts in the comment section below. But now back to the story. And in the middle of 2017, the Lightyear.io was created. And this is a commercial endeavor ran upon the Stellar network to facilitate Stellar becoming, for instance, a global payment method in the developing world. And furthermore, as you may have heard, later on in 2017, Lightyear partnered up with IBM, which made the valuation of the Stellar token called Lumens to skyrocket. So now we're in the end of the first quarter of 2018, and you may be wondering what Stellar has planned for this year. And I'm very excited to see where the Stellar Foundation can take this, but before we go into this, I want to talk a little bit about the features of the Stellar platform. And first of all, we have a confirmation time between 3 and 5 seconds, and according to the team, the network is able to process around 1000 transactions per second. And as I mentioned before, what they are building is a platform for micropayments and cross-border transactions. And this might not seem to be that revolutionary, but we are missing one thing, that they are supporting transactions for both fiat and digital currencies. So let me show you some graphics that can explain this better than I can.
How money moves on Stellar. Meet Amy. Amy is a customer of Universal Remittance Company in the US and often sends payments to Tunde in Nigeria. Meet Tunde. Tunde is a customer of Domestic Bank in Nigeria. Meet Stellar. Stellar is an open platform that connects banks, payment systems, and people. Both Domestic Bank and Universal Remittance Company have integrated with Stellar, so they can move money quickly, reliably, and at almost no cost. When Amy sends Tunde $100 through her remittance company's mobile application, within fractions of a second, it sends a message to Domestic Bank to make sure Tunde's account is compliant. Then the remittance company, which is an anchor on the Stellar network, meaning that it can accept deposits and issue credits on the Stellar network, deducts the funds from Amy's individual account. Those funds are moved over to Universal's pool account, and then moved on to Stellar by issuing credits for Amy's dollars on the network. Once Universal's credits are inside Stellar, the network searches for the best exchange rate amongst all the market makers on the network. The exchange is complete, and now the Nigerian Naira moved to Domestic Bank's base account. Domestic Bank receives these digital credits for Naira from the Stellar network, and Domestic Bank credits Tunde's personal account. That is how $1 US converts to any of 180 currencies on Stellar, moves in 5 seconds or less, and costs a fraction of a cent.
So, as you might have heard, any remittance company, or as I interpret it, banks, that is an anchor on the Stellar network is able to use it. So you remember that I was talking about that there aren't any financial incentive on running a node on the Stellar network. Well, the idea is that every anchor on the network should run their own node because they have a financial interest in keeping the network secure. However, what I haven't been able to find out is why a remittance company actually wants to be an anchor. Sure, it gives their customers a better transmittance service, but they're also missing out the fees that they would have gained if they weren't running the Stellar integration. Now, don't get me wrong, any bank with plans of the future should take cryptocurrencies seriously, but I can also see them lobbying against Stellar rather than working with them. So, as before, be sure to share your opinion on this. And currently, there's an impressive list of companies and anchors on the Stellar webpage, where we can find worldwide banks and other large companies such as Stripe and of course IBM, and if I were you, I'd be sure to keep a close look on this in the future. Now on to another subject, and you might have heard that Stellar have smart contracts, and it's true, but probably the way you think. I mean, the Stellar platform is not like, for instance, Ethereum, where you have very few limitations on what you are able to compute. Ethereum is what you call a Turing complete computer, and this means that the computational powers of the platform is able to simulate another Turing complete computer on the platform. And this sort of proves the computational competence of the platform. But this is not the case for Stellar. No, because Stellar is not trying to be a world computer. Stellar is perfecting the formula for currency management. And for this you actually don't need the support of complex computations. You just need some basic rules from which you can create complex structures. And Stellar's take on this is a set of 11 operations that you can combine in order to get the actual functionality of smart contracts. And also, the power of these smart contracts doesn't lie in the computational power, but rather in the cryptographic theory and its applications. And I think this is quite ingenious. Not only do we lower the entry point of creating smart contracts, but we also increase the security by majorly lowering the risk of creating insecure smart contracts. And also, since we don't need the computational requirements in the same way, the network is much more lightweight, which is one of the reasons that transaction fees can almost be neglected. These fees can be as low as just a fraction of lumens per transaction. So what we have is a network that lays the foundation for sending any currency all around the world for very low fees. And this can be applied in at least two different ways. First of all, since the targeted currency is arbitrary, it allows for the creation of new currencies on top of the network. That is, you can create tokens on the Stellar network, which is perfect for, let's say, any project that wants to have economic interactions, or why not even an ICO. And the other application is a trading exchange. And even though all currencies of the world won't be implemented at once, this network at least gives the opportunity for it. So if we have the possibility to send money from one currency to another, the trading application is not far away. So now I think this is a good time to talk about the token, Lumens. And these are native assets on the Stellar blockchain, and it serves two purposes. First of all, it plays a small anti-spam role in the way that each transaction has a small fee, as I mentioned earlier, and this prevents bad actors from flooding the network. And also, the Stellar network requires all accounts to hold a minimum balance of 1 lumen, which ensures that the accounts are authentic. And now, you might be wondering that if the nodes running the network don't have any incentives, where does the fees go? And well, in short, these fees are collected into a pool that are weekly distributed by a voting process on the network. And this pool also has an inflation component that raises the total number of lumens by 1% each year. And I actually won't go deeper into this topic, but if you want to know more, you can absolutely read about it on the Stellar webpage. And the second usage for lumens is that it sometimes can facilitate a multi-currency transaction. And as you saw in the video, when any trade is about to go down, the Stellar network searches for the one with the best price rate or price rate route, and this might be one where lumens are included. So I wouldn't say that these are the strongest of use cases I've heard throughout the crypto space. However, the network itself has great potential, and it's probable that the Lumens token will grow with it. And now a bit of stats regarding the token. And we have a total supply of just over 100 billion lumens that are pre-mined, which means that the Stellar Foundation from the beginning owned all of them. Right now there's a circulating supply of just around 20 billion, which means that the Stellar Foundation still owns about 80% of the total supply. And this should be a warning sign to you, but you shouldn't fear, because they have a quite good-hearted plan for the token distribution. And what they want to do is to distribute the token somewhat evenly around the world in order to create a basic usage. And looking at the webpage, we find that 50% of the token distribution will be through what they call a direct sign-up program. And this basically means that anyone who wants Lumen can sign up when they run one of these rounds and actually be handed tokens for free. And they have done this previously with, for example, their Facebook group, and we will be seeing more of these in the future, so keep your eyes open for it. And furthermore, 25% of the total amount will be distributed via their partnership program, which will encourage more anchors to sign up on their network. 20% will be distributed for free to Bitcoin and Ripple holders, and this is to promote these holders to explore and use the Stellar network in a more extensive way. And finally, the last 5% is reserved for the Stellar Foundation. So in short, they seem to be pretty good guys. And cunning, of course, but in these times they often go hand in hand. So we are approaching the end of this video, but as I promised, we will first talk a bit about what is up and coming in 2018, and there are a few things that you should keep your eyes open for. First of all, they are putting in a lot of focus on the SDEX, the Stellar Decentralized Exchange, which together with the support for so many currencies, could become a very large player. And secondly, they are currently developing a Lightning Network technology on the network which will majorly increase the transaction speed. They will also put a lot of effort into the overall brand communication, make it easier to run a full node and improve the protocol performance and reduce its attack surface. Essentially, what they're doing is to establish a very solid foundation for broad usage all across the world. It will be very interesting to follow the journey of Stellar and hopefully see the list of anchors and companies grow. So that's enough for today. I hope that you have enjoyed this video as much as I have making it. And if you liked it, I would love it if you smash the like button and also subscribe to us here on YouTube. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat and so on. And I will leave the links to all of them in the description below. Until the next time, have a good one.